sexual and asexual reproduction and their importance for survival of species. Reproduction is the basic characteristic of life. Living organisms reproduce to keep population numbers at steady levels, ensuring the survival of species. Failure to reproduce would lead to extinction. We have been exploring two different types of reproduction: sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. For each of the reproductive methods, we are going to compare them with regard to their definition, advantages, disadvantages, and examples of them. The definition of sexual reproduction. It involves fertilization and requires sex cells from two parents. The advantages of sexual reproduction is the offspring will be different from its parents. This is known as variation. Genetic variation allows the species to adapt to its surroundings. Good traits are passed on and strengthen the species, which increases their survival rate. The disadvantages of sexual reproduction is that it requires two sets of sex cells, and the parents must meet to mate. Sexual reproduction is often slower, more complex, and less reliable than asexual reproduction. Examples of sexual reproduction include most animals. All flowering plants and those that make seeds also reproduce sexually. The definition of asexual reproduction. It involves one parent and results in an exact copy of an organism. The advantages, it's usually faster and easier, so a new plant or animal can colonize an area more quickly. A mate does not have to be found, so no travel is involved, which saves energy. Another advantage is that it can produce a large number of offspring very quickly. The disadvantages include the fact that the new organisms are genetically identical to their parent and to each other. This means adaptation does not occur. Organisms with no variation that cannot adapt may become extinct. Examples of asexual reproduction include plants and fungi that make spores, single-celled organisms, for example bacteria, and certain plants, for example strawberry plant, that reproduce by runners. Propagating and growing plants. Plant propagation is the process by which a grower increases their supply of a type of plant. Plants can be propagated using seeds, which is a form of sexual reproduction, or through the vegetative methods that are listed in the table below. Vegetative methods are a method of asexual reproduction. Daffodils and onions propagate by bulbs. A bulb consists of leaf bases made up of several swollen leaf bases with stored food, and they're attached by a short, thick stem. Daughter bulbs form from side buds found amongst the leaf bases. Potatoes reproduce by a method known as tubers. A tuber is a swollen region of a stem or root, which is a food storage organ. Tubers grow into one or more daughter plants. Strawberry plants and spider plants reproduce by the method of runners. They produce plantlets at the ends of horizontal stems called runners. Commercial use of plants. Commercial means associated with business and profit. Food. One of the most important uses of land is for the agricultural production of crops for food. Some of the most important crops are rice, corn, wheat, and potatoes. Fuel. Timber can be burned as a fuel. Biofuels can be produced from plants using fermentation. Bioethanol can be made by fermenting sugarcane. Raw materials. Timber is used for building materials. Oils can be used in cooking and cosmetics. Fibres, such as cotton and linen, can be used in clothing. Medicines. Some well-known medicines are still made from plants. Others are made chemically, but come from plants originally. Willow trees were used to produce aspirin. Opium poppies are used to produce morphine. Quinine, made from the bark of the cinchona tree, is used to treat malaria. Aesthetic uses of plants. Plants are used ornamentally to decorate our homes and gardens. They are often used on ceremonial occasions, including weddings and funerals. Plants are grown commercially to meet these aesthetic needs. Farming. Plants are genetically modified. They have their genetic information changed so that they can produce medically useful substances such as drugs and vaccines. The advantage of producing such medicines is that the product will be easier and cheaper to produce. However, the process is controversial. There is some concern that genetically modified plants could escape into nature and do environmental damage. Some people also think the products could be harmful to health in the longer term. Genetic information. Our genes determine our features. Half of an organism's DNA is inherited from a paternal source, that means father, and the other half from a maternal source, that means mother. Due to this, sexual reproduction gives rise to variation. Gene. Functional unit of inheritance. A gene is the subunits that make up chromosomes. Allele are different forms of the same gene. Phenotype. The visible characteristics of an organism that occur as a result of its genes. Genotype. The alleles that an organism has for a particular characteristic, usually written as symbols or letters. Heterozygous is a genotype in which two alleles for the characteristic are different. For example, big A, small a, or big B, small b. Homozygous is a genotype in which the two alleles for the characteristic are the same. For example, big A, or small a, small a. P is the symbol that represents the parental generation in a cross. F1 is the symbol that represents the first filial generation in a cross, the first offspring. And F2 is the symbol that represents the second generation in a cross. Growth and development of different organisms. The growth and development of different organisms can be influenced by different factors. Plant growth and development. Seeds require water, oxygen and warmth for successful germination. A top tip to remember is wow. In addition, for successful plant growth, light and nutrients are essential. Plants require light for the process of photosynthesis, and they obtain nutrients from the soil. Extra nutrients can be added to the soil in the form of fertilizer to promote plant growth. The table shows some important minerals and the function that they play in a plant. So, for example, magnesium is needed to make chlorophyll. Nitrate is needed to make proteins. Phosphate is needed to make DNA. And potassium is needed for healthy growth in plants. Human growth and development. Humans need a balanced diet, water, minerals, vitamins, and suitable conditions for healthy growth. The first table shows the three main food groups of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. The sources are the types of food that you find these food groups in, and the function identifies what each of the food groups is used for. So carbohydrates can be found in fruit, vegetables, bread, pasta and rice. And the function of carbohydrates is to provide energy for cell activities. Fats are commonly found in butter, cream, cheese and meat, and their function is energy storage and insulation. Proteins are commonly found in beans, eggs, meat and milk, and their function is to provide building materials for growth and repair. We also have some essential vitamins highlighted in the second table, again highlighting their sources, their functions, and what disease you would have if you were low in any of these vitamins. So vitamin A can be found in dairy products and oily fish. The function of vitamin A is to give healthy skin, good vision in low light, and a strong immune system. If you are deficient of vitamin A, you would have night blindness. Vitamin C can be found in a wide variety of fruit and vegetables, especially citrus fruits like oranges. The function of vitamin C is that it helps maintain cells that give support and structure to the body and helps injuries to heal. If you are low in vitamin C, the deficiency disease you would have is called scurvy. Vitamin D can be found in oily fish and eggs. It helps the body to absorb calcium, and if you had a deficiency disease of vitamin D, you would have rickets. Biological action in response to internal and external changes to maintain stable body conditions. Homeostasis is a process which keeps internal body conditions steady and within tolerable limits. It is important to maintain an environment in which all our cells can function properly. A drop in core body temperature causes hypothermia, and the failure of the body to keep the blood glucose level steady causes diabetes. The first diagram shows us how our body responds to an increase and a decrease in body temperature. Our normal body temperature is at 37 degrees Celsius. If we experience an increase in body temperature, thermoreceptors in the hypothalamus detect this change and send nerve impulses to the skin. This will see an increase in sweating and an increase in what we call vasodilation. These two actions bring about a decrease in body temperature. If we experience a decrease in body temperature, the thermoreceptors of the hypothalamus will send nerve impulses to the skin, which will increase the rate of shivering and cause what we call vasoconstriction. These actions should help to increase our core body temperature back to 37 degrees. Our second diagram represents the changes that happen in response to an alteration in our blood glucose concentration. After eating a meal, our blood glucose can increase. This change is detected by cells in the pancreas. The pancreas responds to this by releasing more insulin and less glucagon into the blood. Liver cells remove more glucose from the blood and store it in the liver. This results in a decrease in blood glucose levels. Following a period of fasting or following a period of exercise, our blood glucose levels could decrease. This change is detected by cells in the pancreas, which releases less insulin and more glucagon into the blood. The glucagon targets liver cells and promotes them to release glucose into the bloodstream. This increase in glucose in the bloodstream helps to bring our blood glucose concentration back to the set point.